And we are live. We are live.
Hey.
We're live tonight with John Forster. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. And we're here with JR. JR celebrating, I think, from yesterday. You're a Philly fan, I believe.
Go Birds. Go Birds.
One of the things that, I really appreciated about John is so I reached out to John after I think the deal was public, the potential acquisition. He got back to me. We had a call. He agreed to appear. And kind of just to give you context about that is after we got involved in Gtii, we reached out literally to the company, like hundreds of times and never got a response, let alone an appearance. So the kind of comparing the two gives us a lot of, makes us feel good about the entire situation.
Rich, I will say this. We're a private company right now, so it's a lot easier for me to do this, right? If this deal does happen, I might be restricted, and it will be my first foray as a public company CEO for whatever duration of time that is. We will have to certainly follow regulatory compliance.
And I understand, by the way, for tonight's purposes, we may ask you some questions. You may not know the answer, can't answer, or whatever. That's perfectly fine. We understand that. We don't intend, by the way, to ask any questions that put you on the spot or anything else, because we just had a little conversation off the air, and I'm going to kind of speak for JR a little bit. But originally when this deal was put out there, we're cynics. And so we are skeptical of pretty much every deal that comes. And part of that is where we come from, prior from MMTLP and seeing how things work. So when we were presented with the deal, and I hadn't spoken to you, had no interaction with you, whatever, we were skeptical. And I think we communicated that to the crowd. And as time went on, we had a chance to kind of think about circumstances, the deal. I got to speak with you. You reached out. Again, that was part of the sequence. You went on, you put on, I guess the receiver put on like an hour video, which I viewed, and you were gracious enough to present yourself here today. So I'm happy to kind of, as JR and I were talking about, at this point in time, if we were, and this is not promoting, so let me put that out there, not legal advice, not financial advice. We're not promoting the transaction itself, but I'm speaking JR. We would both like to go forward personally with the transaction under the circumstances. Not that we don't have reservations, not that we don't wish the circumstances were different, obviously, but they are what they are. And, kind of part of this whole scenario was we wanted to make sure that retail wasn't getting screwed. And, in a large part, a lot of these shareholders have been down that road. So we wanted to make ourselves feel comfortable that notwithstanding, because we don't know if your business is going to work. We don't know if you're going to be the next Palantir. I'm hoping, by the way, I'm hoping for the next Palantir. That's my hope. But we don't know if that's going to be successful. But we know we're looking forward to have a chance, and a fair chance. So that's kind of why, what we're trying to accomplish on behalf of shareholders. So why don't you talk, and I know you did a video, but some of these people here tonight may not have seen it. So maybe in a couple minutes you can describe what your company does and go from there.
So let me kind of go back and take a look at this from 30,000 feet. One, the nexus of our team, the core founders, we've been together for about 6 years trading socially. That's kind of how we all met each other. We're all professionals in our own right. Some of us, some of the team members have been working with me or for me, in other business ventures for, a dozen years. But, we got together in and around social trading. And we saw a massive issue in 2020, 2021, when all that market liquidity hit, the markets. I don't know if you guys are numbers nerds, but if you look at what happened in 2021, the average trading volume on the OTC was about $2 trillion from 2010 to about 2020. And in 2021, it hit over $10 trillion. So, that's absurd, right? So, I mean, you had a lot of companies, seeing massive moves in their stock price. And it was because a lot of people jumping into the market, gambling, following people that had no business giving advice, right? Completely unvetted. They might have been an influencer in a different genre. You had potentially comedians, or you had health and wellness experts with large followings. All of a sudden were stock gurus. It was laughable, right? So if you knew what you were doing, there was a lot of money to be made. But if you're making money, someone else probably is losing money. So we just saw the fleecing of all of these new traders in the market. We said there has to be a better way to do this. We formed a company in 2021 called TraderWare. The first iteration was not TraderWare, but that's our development company. We build tools specifically for retail traders. And the fact that we saw this massive move to social in that time period, and it's a very ambitious project, Traderverse was created. So as we were building Traderverse, and that's going to launch within, our alpha actually launches in about 30 days. We've got a few hundred people in there testing right now. Through that time period, we started looking and seeing, a lot of what we did was built on the back of AI. We use our own algorithms. We've got our own machine learning experts that work for us. We've got a great core team that have been with us for multiple years. And we said, hey, listen, with LLMs becoming such a prevalent part of what's happening in the market and people using ChatGPT to ask questions, I don't know if you know the statistics, but ChatGPT is it's less than 65% accurate when you're asking financial questions. Not to mention it doesn't source live data. So if you're asking things about, live pricing or what's, predictions, it often is not going to give you exactly what you need. And I don't want to get into the mechanics of how that all works, but ultimately what we did was we said, all right, listen, let's use these LLMs, and who knows if OpenAI is going to be the best 2 years from now. And I'm glad we built it the way we built it, because right now it's not, right? DeepSeek is probably the biggest advancement in this. Even though they used OpenAI, what they did, all LLMs were basically a black box where you couldn't really understand how they were training models. What DeepSeek did was they actually got in there and they showed you how you can efficiently train a model for fractions of the cost of what all of these big models were being trained. So ultimately what we're a bolt-on, Traders GPT is a bolt-on to an LLM, and we're portable. So what we're an advanced retrieval system, and our team is phenomenal. We've got some really smart people that work with us, and what we've done is we've been able to actually source live data. What we do is we kind of pre-sort information and then we feed it into LLMs, which makes what we ask very efficient, and the accuracy of the information we're able to get back, because we're ultimately training the LLM as we source the information. When we give it a question, we don't only just give it a question, we give it the needed resources that it needs to look at to actually give us the answer back.
Okay.
So in a nutshell.
I appreciate that. And just as it turns out, I think Elon Musk put out an offer for OpenAI today for 98.6 billion, I think, something like that.
Correct.
As it turns out. Now, if I'm correct, the way you're going to generate revenue, you have two kind of modes. One is business to business and one is business to consumer. The business to consumer, if I read it correctly, you'd have like three tiers of membership, and you'd pay like a monthly fee. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's a SaaS model. And in terms of cost, part of what we've done, number one, we burn very little. And I'm sure you guys will have some questions about.
Yeah, actually, I'll ask you right now. So that's as you go on. It'll be easier so I don't forget.
So we burn a fraction of what other companies do in terms of how we're able to build this. We do offshore some labor, and we've got some pretty big relationships in other jurisdictions that we use, in personal relationships. Our Sarah Malby, who's the current CEO of TraderWare, He's from Pakistan originally, has lived in Saudi Arabia. We have a software house that we've built in Pakistan. So we've got our own software house. And we've got about 40 devs that work directly for us.
Let me ask it a different way. And again, like I said, I know some of the stuff you may not be able to answer, but I know that there's and I don't know if this element is necessary for the deal to go forward. I know there's $1 million investment from Hudson Capital, I think was
yeah, it's a warm relationship to us. It's somebody that I know personally.
Is that a necessary component of the deal going forward?
What do you mean necessary component?
In other words, do they have to finance the $1 million for the? Let's assume you satisfied everything you need to do to complete the acquisition. Would you need that $1 million from Hudson Capital to complete it?
We can self-fund for multiple years if need be.
Okay. And the other question I had in that term is that amount of that $1 million, and I was going to ask you a little bit about that. Is that more than your annual burn rate?
Oh, well more.
Okay. And I noticed also
right now it's probably twice our annual burn, but we're going to have to scale the team, so expenses will go up, but it's twice what we would need per year.
And also saw in that, and again, I understand, but there was some language, and I know it's just a letter of intent. It wasn't a final deal, but it referred to that they might be entitled to get some equity. Do you know what that would be, and do you know how that would impact GTII?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I doubt that would. If we were to engage that, it's essentially a line of credit. If we were to engage that line of credit, that they wouldn't want equity in the company. They would just want to be repaid.
Okay.
With a nominal interest rate.
One thing you represented on the and again, I appreciate you being forthright with all this. It's really appreciated. I can't tell you how much it's appreciated. You indicated, I think, on the video that you're well capitalized, and that's kind of a general term. So what do you mean by that term?
We've got enough money to operate without revenues in the immediate future. But that being said, we've got significant relationships. So, you had asked, we've got 3 pricing models. So we're a SaaS-based system. The current model has 3 levels. We do 3 levels based on, and there'll be essentially expenses with an LLM have to do with the number of queries and how in-depth the queries are.
And just for everybody out there, an LLM is a learning language model.
Large language model. Essentially ChatGPT for, most people, that's an LLM. So, the more questions, the more complex the questions, the more interweaved they are with logic, right? The more the LLM has to work. So the more work the LLM has to do, the higher the expense in terms of, what it costs you to ask those questions. We've figured out a way, and it was pretty innovative. We're starting to see some other people figure this out now too, but we've been doing it for about 6 months now. We figured out a way to make those costs very nominal. So we pioneered some technology behind the scenes. And it's not brain surgery. It was just a great idea that we stumbled upon and, we capitalized on. There's a lot of smart people out there in this space, and DeepSeek really opened up the playbook. So you're going to see the cost of accessing these LLMs significantly reduced. So what does that mean to a company? Your operating costs, right? Your cost of goods sold essentially becomes far less.
Okay.
So I want to inject a question here. So, and John, we definitely appreciate you being here. So one of the things that took me, kind of gave me a little pause for concern when we started reading over the documents is, and now kind of listening to you, I kind of just want to hear you answer the question for the people that are watching. But,
Sure.
You have this organization that the prior board basically gutted. The receivers report is full of all kinds of nonsense that they were doing. And I'm sitting here listening to you, and I've read some of your tweets and listened to the receivers YouTube last week. And initially, my first question is okay, you sound like you know what you're doing. You sound reasonably intelligent. You sound like you've got a great business model. You're being innovative. You're full of great ideas. Why do you want this thing that's in receivership that was gutted by the previous board? What is it about GTII that's attractive to you?
Well, I'll give you the immediate, attraction for us, right? And let me preface that, and I don't want people to get too excited because, as you said, this thing is a disaster. If you look under the covers, right, there's been so much manipulation. There's been just so much, fraud, for lack of a better term, right, in this thing. And it's not proven yet, so I don't want to get in trouble. And you guys are
Yeah, just so you know, I used the word shenanigans and got sued for slander.
Okay, so I don't want to be sued, but if they want to
talk about anything that isn't in the receiver's report that's been filed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's just quite obvious based on the receiver's reports that there were things that just logically should not have happened. Right. So, there's also, the prior, let's say prior management, right? The prior management, directors, and the beneficiaries of shares that went out for things that don't make any sense. All of that stuff has to be cleaned up because I can assure you, I am not going to bring in a very valuable company and make money for people that have no business, being part of our organization. I have zero interest in doing that. So the receiver has a lot of work to do for us to be able to pull this off. And, I have, listen, Paul, I've gotten to know over the last year. I didn't meet him because of this transaction. We were looking for a public vehicle, or at least exploring the option of going this direction. I knew GTII. I saw the saga. I saw what happened. I myself knew what was happening. I mean, it's quite obvious if you look at filings that management was selling stock. As soon as you see that, run for the hills, right? Because they don't believe in what they're doing. And if you are management and you're going to sell stock, you better let your shareholders know why you're selling it for, right? So there was just, it just didn't make any sense to me. So, I was a shareholder at one point in time. I got out, and I didn't make, any money with the stock, made pennies, after taxes, probably nothing. But at the end of the day, it just didn't make sense that all of this stuff was happening. And unfortunately, and that's what we're doing. And I'm going to go back to my initial statement. We're building tools for retail investors. So you asked me why we're interested. We're interested because at one point in time, this had 30,000 shareholders, right? What a great opportunity for us to prove who we are, the veracity and the value of the tools that we bring to market. And we're going to be competing against some of the big boys in the space, right? So, if we were to get, and I know this shareholder base and the associated shareholders and other companies that have, really, gotten beaten up in this market by, poor management or, whether it be shorts, they are very vocal. And if you can give them the tools to make what they do better or to make their life easier or to connect with other people, that's what we do. What better opportunity for us to market ourselves, but to actually be in the game in the front row, with a public vehicle. So that's really the thought process behind this. There's other longer term plans, but this has to get cleaned up, much more than it is now. Paul's taken a great first step, but there's a lot more that has to get done.
So I wanted to kind of ask a follow-up question that JR just asked. So, and again, I know that, circumstances can change and, this is your best guess at this time, but you kind of talked about it during the video and I kind of wanted to follow up. I was trying to figure out what kind of the things you needed to happen before you consider closing the deal. And I know there may be other things, but one of the things I thought I heard was that former management couldn't be involved.
Yeah. So I think Paul had suggested the issuance of the Series B, and that's the initial way for us to actually keep control of our company, right? We're not going to merge our company in and lose control. It just doesn't make any sense. It's logical. We will never do that. right? So we're not going to. Go ahead. What's the question?
And I guess what you're saying is the Series A that was issued to Mr. Reichman, that caused an issue about who would have control over voting in the company. Is that correct?
Correct. We do not want their voice involved in our company, right? So if we're moving this into GTII, we want to control our business. It just seems logical.
Will you seek to cancel those A shares? And the reason why there's a reason why I ask. So when we looked at the deal original and we looked at the terms, the voting term, we didn't know that the Series A kind of was part of that, incorporated in there in terms of why it was set up that way.
Was your question, are we going to cancel the A shares?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, listen, the deal doesn't happen if he has any say in what our business is going to or not going to do. So yes.
So I guess my question was, will you be willing to consider, because the way it is now, it's a big number versus a small number. In order to gain control, I understand. If the Series A are canceled, are you willing to consider adjusting those numbers so that at least in a voting, and we're not talking about control. I'm not talking about control. But right now, I think it's 1,000 to 1. So that I think the way it was drafted, excluding the Series A, is that something you're willing to consider?
Consider what? Changing the share structure?
Yeah, in terms of, because if the Series A are canceled, then the need to have done what you did with the preferred B and the structure is not really necessary because the Series A are now gone. And that series,
well, listen, there's not a world where I'm not going to be able to control the direction of the company.
Understood. Yeah,
so
that I understood.
Yeah. So and listen, I mean, you and JR here, probably very intelligent guys, right? But what do you know about what do you know about running an AI company? And Joe Trader, who's got 10 shares of GTII, he's not going to know how to run an AI company. I mean, it's complicated, right? So, and it's super competitive. It's a hyper competitive space, and it changes daily.
Well,
right? So
I think the bigger concern isn't the running of the company. It's the shelf offerings and the reverse splits and all of those other things. If the shareholder base loses its voting power when it comes to some of those things, that to me sounds a little problematic. That to me sounds like I've now lost any control I have over the organization issuing more shares or opting to do a reverse split. I think that's what we're really talking about.
Once this gets clean, and listen, ultimately we're doing this, and there's no compensation for us in doing. These are non-convertible, right? So I'm getting zero for the $1 million plus that I've got personally invested in this company. I'm getting zero value, right? Other than inheriting, Pandora's box, essentially, right? So at some point in time, that will have to change. I am absolutely open to the fact that, hey, let's structure this like a traditional company would be structured. I have no, I would think that yes, that's logically going to happen. This was just the best way with, a 360A1C reverse merger. That was the best way to handle some of the speed bumps, at least that we've got to get over initially.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just the way this is structured now. We still have, there's still a lot that has to happen to get this thing, over the finish line.
And I think you said in your video that you don't have any intention of, at least at this point in time, of doing a reverse split. If you uplist to NASDAQ, then things might be different, and that your hope is.
Listen, we've got direct relationships at NASDAQ. We know people in the listing department. They know what we're thinking about doing, right? This company, our company is not ready for an uplist. We've got to generate revenue, right? I mean, so,
right.
And we'll put out our financial model. I think we've put out some projections, but we'll put out a detailed financial model if we get closer to the finish line here, so everybody can see. But it's not far-fetched with some of the B2B relationships we're working with right now, and the B2C options. We think we could be doing 6 to 9 million a month within the year.
Okay. There's a bunch of shares that I think you referenced. There's a bunch of shares that are of questionable nature, and
I referenced the receiver's report. I think he
Yes.
put in his report there's 190 million shares that should be returned to Treasury. In his opinion.
And is that is that necessary also to prevent the necessity of a reverse split?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, one, I don't know how it happened, but it did, right? GTII went from pennies to $9 or $8 and change at one point in time, right? And it closed, I think the high water mark was 5+. With the number of shares, I don't know what the share count was at the time, and there was massive dilution. It looked like, over the last year, so it probably wasn't as heavy as it is now. But if you think about it, 190 million shares, that's essentially a 2-for-1 reverse split without hurting retail. It's a benefit to retail. So if the receiver is able to claw back those shares, there's more than enough shares for liquidity. And, I don't see us doing a reverse split anytime soon. If that happens, I don't think that we'd ever have to do it. But I don't want to say we'll never do it because I don't know. Again, this is my first foray, right? So I've run multiple companies before. I've exited multiple companies. I've got a pretty solid business background, so I know how to run this business and generate revenue. I'm going to rely on some of the expertise that we're bringing in that have experience running public companies. And my position as CEO could be interim, right? I mean, we might find a better candidate to come in that's got the expertise that they need, and I'll sit on the board. So I just don't know what that looks like. There's a lot of work to get done prior to, any of those decisions happening. Right now, I'm the one in the driver's seat.
Understood. Do you need, I guess there's an ongoing audit because there was a problem with the prior audits. Is that a prerequisite to closing the transaction, the audit be completed?
Not that it's completed, but I think before the transaction closes, it will be completed as long as we can see everything that's happened. And, the reason the audit's important for us is we've got to see where the bodies are buried, right? So ultimately, we want to see exactly what's happened. What type of shenanigans do we have to worry about when we jump into this thing?
So John, that was all good stuff, and I mean, like I said, I kind of knew what the answer was, but I really wanted you to communicate that out to the people that are watching. The one thing that I think my comment back to you is, and I'm appreciative that you want an engaged shareholder base, and certainly GTII has that. But the one thing that I think we want in return is a communicative CEO, someone that's going to talk to us, someone that's not going to talk down to us. I mean, I realize Richard and I are both educated in a lot of this stuff we get, but the average retail investor does not know what specific governmental filings are, does not know, how to read financials. We're hungry for a CEO who's going to be willing to come on a show like this a year from now and talk to us, have a conversation with us. So if you are the interim CEO for the next year and this deal does go through, can you at least commit to that, to having these types of conversations, going out on Twitter and holding spaces and talking about what's going on as best you can, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that's what your shareholder base is looking for.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, the one thing I can guarantee you is I will be transparent and I will be communicative with the shareholder base, whether it's myself or if it's our team that you're talking to. I can't guarantee you're always going to have me.
Sure.
But I can make people available for sure. And in terms of, talking to somebody that might not know, we're building tools for retail. When I say retail, I'm talking about the person that's not even trading, that has no idea how markets work, and they need help with the educational journey. That is exactly what we built, right? So, we're building a product now that starts with a financial curriculum at grade 6, right? So we literally are building educational tools for the trading and investing community. The thing that we wanted to do, since trading and investing has become so much influencer or financial influencer driven, we want to make sure that those people are held accountable. So a lot of what we've done inside of Traderverse does just that, right? We're a community building tool. So these influencers can build communities and actually, improve the quality of what they do with the tools that we've built specifically for them as well. I truly think we're going to change the retail trading space, and I'm very passionate about it.
Speaking of trading, because that's kind of a big issue right now, and in Vegas, I think this would be good if you had like double black diamond status, but I think on the OTC it's not good. And so there's if you look at the trading, it trades a few shares every day. Some either it's broker to broker or some accredited investors. But I presume that this doesn't work for you unless ultimately GTI is trading publicly, and so all these shareholders who are tied up and cannot trade will have the opportunity to trade. Isn't that the ultimate idea?
Yeah, well, listen, the reason it's not trading right now is, it was taken over by the receiver, right? So ultimately they've shelved this thing until this thing gets cleaned up. It is a shell at this point, right? There is no operating entity in here. There's no business.
That's a point of, by the way, again, because we've been around a while, that's a point of contention because and I think you got some questions during the video on it. So there was a dividend issue. There was a question about that. There had to be an opinion by counsel stating it wasn't a shell. So there's actually an opinion by GTII counsel. I think it's Mr. Markowitz, and he says it's not a shell, and therefore they could issue the dividend. So it's interesting.
Listen, above my pay grade, I don't know any of the happenings there. I don't have any inside baseball to tell you there. But the way I look at it as a retail investor myself, it's a shell. What business does it do, right? It was in the business of selling stock, is what it was doing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It was in the business of diluting retail shareholders. And listen, look at what we do. We're building tools for retail shareholders. The one and only thing you need to know is if we do the wrong thing, it ruins our credibility in this space. Why would we ever do the wrong thing?
Well, I think the shareholder base is skeptical because for the last 2 years we've been fished along with, well, there's a deal in the pipeline here, there's a deal in the pipeline there, and they're looking into this organization. Most recently that I remember was the Torrento Mine deal, and then they popped back up again as well too when they were in receivership. So that's where the skepticism is coming from, John. Just so you know.
Yeah, but the flip side,
Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the flip side is true also, and that's kind of what I said before. So you have a bunch of skeptical people, but they're going to be the loyalist crowd also. Yeah. When they're on your team, they're going to, and it's been demonstrated over the last 2 years. When they're on your team, they're fully in, and they're going to be your biggest supporters carrying you forward.
And ultimately, that's why we're doing this. I'm not going to be coy about the idea here. If we're building tools for retail shareholders, right? Why would we not want them to be our biggest advocate, right? So, that's why we're here. We think it's a great to move our products across the retail market.
Now, one thing I think JR mentioned is one concern that shareholders have is toxic lenders. And I think in our discussion, we talked about that, and you were familiar with that.
I will never take any money, not a dollar, from a toxic lender. I won't do it.
I'm going to hold you to that, John.
Have at it.
Yeah. And and a lot of the shareholders are, part of their dedication is because of what happened with Alpine, and there's some reference to there being a concentrated short position at one point in time. What it is now. Kind of, I'm in the same position as you. When I started this, I thought, I don't know if there's really a short position, right. But if there is, and you put a business in there that makes money, I know what's going to happen. And that's the only way I can guarantee that it will happen. The rest is, I really don't know. So you're familiar with the history of Alpine, correct?
Yeah, I know Alpine. I've been in this space a long time, and yeah, they don't have a stellar reputation. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, to say the least. And unfortunately,
John.
the SEC continued their new short reporting regulation for a year, enforcement today. So
I reposted something about that today. Listen, it's super frustrating, but as a retail shareholder, you kind of expect it, right? The regulatory agencies have not been on the side of retail. So listen, I don't know that we're going to be that, superhero that comes in and is able to fix everything or anything, but I can tell you that we're going to try, right? And we're going to be a voice for retail.
Well, I think that's more important than the lofty goal of trying to fix everything. I don't think anybody expects anybody to fix everything because it's just unrealistic. I mean, these regulators are so captured, it's not even funny. And like we were talking before we even started, Congress is the same way. So I think it's refreshing to hear someone being on the side of retail, a CEO understanding what's actually going on in the markets is half the battle.
Yeah, well, listen, there was a post today that somebody, and listen, I'm fiery at times, right? And I like to get into debate. I should have probably been an attorney at some point in my life, but I will say this:
there's still time.
Yeah, trust us.
Listen, I know how much we pay them, so the question was, you're not going to be able to do any of this. Well, listen, I understand what's happening here, right, and what's happening with a lot of these stocks, but it just doesn't seem like leadership has really taken that much point other than Patrick Byrne, right? Patrick's done so much over his lifetime to try to really work in this space, and I admire his efforts, right? But it just seems like there's so many of these companies that were trying to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden, they do the wrong thing. You see toxic debt show up on their balance sheet, right? I mean, you see somebody that's an advocate for retail shareholders, and all of a sudden they're diluting, right? So, and without any word, listen, if a company has to raise money, you have to understand that they're going to sell stock at some point in time, right?
Right.
So you have to look at the fundamentals of the company. But if you're going to sell shares of your company to raise funds, how about communicating to your shareholders in advance? Give them the opportunity to sell if they don't want to be part of this, right? So, there's a lot of different, I just think the culture has to change, right? At least from a retail perspective, I see it that way. And that's what I bring here. I come from the retail community. So I just think that we can do things differently. Maybe it's naive, but we'll see.
Yeah, again, like JR say, the one thing we like, and you've exhibited that at all points in my dealings with you, is being transparent and open and available. And that really is a start of creating a trustful relationship. And again, you have hundreds of thousands of retail shareholders that are looking for a place to park their business, really. And
yeah,
we, JR and I, in various ways up until today, have seen that, have heard from other shareholders. And I really think that your model has the potential of kind of fitting that particular design.
Listen, I think we're, and a lot of what we're building, it's not going to cost you anything to be part of, right? A lot of Traderverse, we have a freemium version of Traderverse, right? It's a social network very specifically built for trading and investing. That's not coming into this, not at this point. Who knows in the future if this all works out, we could roll everything under one umbrella. It's not what the plan is at this point in time, though. And some people have mentioned, hey, Traderverse. It's not Traderverse. We're taking one of our products, Traders GPT, which can generate a lot of revenue, and that's what we're putting in there, right? And the holding company for that is AIversity. We've got other products that we're currently working on, so it's not just Traders GPT that will be producing revenue in this public company. We'll have multiple revenue verticals that will build over the next couple of years, 2 of which are currently in production. We don't start building things before we are confident that we've got commercial relationships with them. So we're building with potential partners that are going to buy our products.
And there's a license agreement between Traderverse and AIversity. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So to get into the weeds, we've got a data warehouse called Traderware Analytics. There's a website. There's social handles, but that's our data warehouse that we're converting into a data lake. That's all of our products. All of our data that we stream from different places, whether it be NASDAQ, NYSE, ICE, LSEG, all of that data, crypto.com, all of that data goes into our data warehouse. We parse it, where it needs to be, and then we pull it, from queries. We pull it from different sources, right? So Traders GPT will be using it, Traderverse will be using it, other tools that we create will be using it. So that's where the license agreement, there's a cost to that, right? So, Traders GPT has to pay Traderware for the use of this data.
Understood.
So instead of paying NASDAQ directly, we're paying them indirectly for the use of the data from the data warehouse.
Okay. Do we have any questions that anybody has before I ask JR if he has any other questions?
The questions that are coming up are the normal, what's going on with Alpine, the dividend, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's not stuff that's really appropriate for John.
Yeah. The biggest issues for us were.
I don't want to talk about any of that because I have nothing to do with it, right? It really has to do with the receiver, and the attorneys. I don't want to get involved in that because I just don't know anything about it.
That's why I'm not reading the questions, John.
Do you believe that do you know if all the litigation will be complete before at the time the receiver leaves?
I think the receiver's tasked to get this all done. So I don't see a scenario unless the judge removes him and puts somebody else in there, or the SEC steps in and takes over everything. And at that point, I think it's probably a liquidation, right? I mean,
yeah,
who would want to touch it if you've got to jump through? Why not just file an S1 and do it with a clean opportunity?
And that's a good point, because we talk about this. A lot of investors are pissed about what went on by former management, but it's a tough call, right? You're pissed, but you don't want the feds to come take over and take out all the whatever value. You don't want them to take all the value. So I understand
if they come in, they own it, right? I mean, and there's no, it's over, right? If they come in. So, I think, and listen, if there's another deal that's better for these shareholders, we are not going to stand in the way. But I can't imagine that, we're a very specific company that fits this. It literally is like a puzzle piece. Now, it's only because we choose to do so. We think that we're a good fit for GTII. I just don't know who else would want to, just get into the weeds here.
Well, we talked about that 2 weeks ago, John. We talked about it at length because, again, going back to my original question, what's the hook here for you? And you answered that. One of the questions I saw pop up, let's fast forward to the judge approves this deal, you get no resistance, you sign all the paperwork, the deal is done. What are next steps? Where do you go once the deal is done?
So I have to talk to the receiver because we're thinking about scenarios. Well, because listen, we've been sitting on the sideline waiting for this to happen and actually, stunting our growth to some respect. We've got other investors that don't want us to do this, that will invest in us if we stay private. We've got some that like the fact that there'll be a public vehicle attached to this, right? So, we've got people on both sides of the fence. But my biggest concern is, what happens if the receiver can't clean this up? Right. So then we're going to want an escape hatch at some point. Right. If he can't get this cleaned up, then this deal doesn't make sense for us. Right. So it really comes. And listen, I really do want to see the shareholders here win. But I will tell you, they can't win if previous management is still engaged with the amount of stock that they have. Because they've proven that they don't care about retail shareholders. right? So if they've got 190 million shares, more than half of the total outstanding, where can this possibly go?
You're preaching to the choir here, because the reason why we're speaking is because of that very point, that we didn't, kind of our goal, just so you know, our original goal when we got started was to get rid of existing management, get an acquisition done, and get it trading again. So that was our goal, JR and I. So we're working our way down the line, and again, we're looking for, again, what you're providing in terms of transparency. And again, this group of shareholders can be the greatest ally, really, and they're very hardworking, dedicated. So,
and listen, that's what we're hoping for, right? Because part of what we do when we put our financial models together, we don't spend a lot in marketing and advertising. If you look at our models, right, we'll make those public at some point in time. The reason is we've got so many relationships in this space, right? With some pretty big influencers. We're building a lot of these products with input from these influencers. So we know they're going to like the products. We know that they're going to bring communities to us. So that's one of the benefits. Another aspect of that is a shareholder base. If you've got 15,000, active, boisterous shareholders that like what you do, the tools that you create, like the fact that you're doing it the right way, there's no better marketing than word of mouth.
Yeah.
So
now, that's a double-edged sword. If we do the wrong thing, I can guarantee you the shareholders are not going to hold back.
They won't. That's true.
So here's a generic question that's out there. Someone says, can you ask John about blockchain and what he thinks about trading on it?
Yeah. So listen, we built our entire platform on the Traderverse side. We've built with the opportunity for, whether it be a token, a coin, for it to be completely integrated on chain. One of the things we're doing there, and in this space, right? You don't owe when you're involved in and I'm kind of deviating because that's not what's happening here in Gtii, but they're all there'll be a pricing level on the Traderverse side. And this is why I keep bringing Traderverse up. There'll be a pricing level where Traders GPT is included in that, right? And there'll be revenue from Traderverse back to Traders GPT or AIverse. So they really are sister companies. They'll work hand in hand. But data security and ownership of your data, right, is becoming a massive concern of people's. So what we're going to do, our profiles module. So if you think about social networks in general, there's two types of social networks. There's a content-first social network, which you would see on X, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, Telegram. It's all about what people say. You look at LinkedIn, it's a people-first social network. It's about who somebody is and then what they say, right? Trying to establish credibility or a history of who somebody is. That's how we've constructed Traderverse. It's about the people, right? So who are you? What do you like to trade? Who do you like to trade with? And the tools that we've created and how we've done it is truly revolutionary. It's going to change the social space for trading and investing. Forget StockTwist, forget all of these other small apps. Traderverse is a monster, right? So we've spent 3 years building it. We're speaking to some very big people that think this is going to change the space. So the fact that we've integrated our profile module to live on chain, where you can actually take your data and own your data, sell your data. If you want to sell your profile to somebody, you can sell it. Your handle. Richard, not legal advice. If that's what you want your handle to be, you can buy that on chain. Through basically would be an NFT that you would own, right? You would buy that handle and you own it. We don't own it, right? The only way we would take it back from you is if you basically, and they're very specific. You would have to really break the terms and conditions. You'd have to be a danger to the community, and then we would delete your user. But ultimately, you own all of your data. You own your username. You can move it. You can port it. So, that piece of it, we're fully integrated on chain. So we're doing some things pretty different than other social platforms are doing currently.
Any other questions, JR, that you saw?
No, nothing that's relevant to this conversation.
John, do you have anything you want to ask us?
Um, I guess in patience, right? I'm just asking for patience because, there's a lot that has to happen to make this work. Um, you know, I think we've been super patient with, the process because it hasn't been easy. It's been a few months now that we've been engaged in trying to get something here done. And I don't know how long, I don't know what the time horizon looks like, in the future, but, we're going to continue to build and add to our team so we can get ready to launch a product. I think one of the questions that I haven't answered is, where's the product at? What stage is the product? We've got a commercial ready product now. To fully productionize it, it would probably take us 2 to 3 weeks. We're adding features to it to make it a little bit more robust. So the longer this takes, the better the product gets. So, we're well capitalized so that, not being able to do something here doesn't affect us being able to continue to build on the other side.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are in a rush to have it listed so that it can trade again. But we've been preaching patience since the day this thing went into receivership. So my own personal opinion is this is obviously better than liquidation or the SEC coming in and taking over. We talked about that 2 weeks ago as well too. So yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, we have no idea if this is going to work out in any respect, notwithstanding the good faith intentions of everybody. But it's certainly, again, good faith intentions, and that takes us a long way from where all these people are. Before I let you go, John, I do it on every live stream, so I got to subject you to 3 jokes. Here we go.
Oh, Jesus.
I was waiting. Why do ducks have feathers on their tails?
You're not asking me, are you?
Yeah, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. To cover their butt quacks. What do you call a bunch of chimps that share an Amazon account? Prime mates. And last but not least, and this is for the benefit of JR, what's orange and red and black and blue all over?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Patrick Mahomes specifically. That was it. John, I wanted to thank you very much for coming on.
Yes.
You're welcome anytime. If you have something you want to communicate to shareholders, again, we're not promoting anything, but we will certainly provide you the avenue to promote, to discuss anything like that. I will be in court on the 19th. And again, like I said, JR and I, individually are supporting the transaction. What other people decide is, their decisions. I've heard from a lot of people, not everybody's in accord, but the majority are, and they're, everybody's looking forward to it because, again, it at least advances the situation in a positive way, at least the way I see it. You have anything to add, JR?
I was just going to say 99% of the comments are positive.
Yeah.
So.
No, I appreciate that. And listen, full transparency, we are pre-revenue, right? We're a startup. There is no guarantee of the success. I've got a pretty good track record in terms of building businesses, so I'm confident in what we can do. I've got a phenomenal team. We've got relationships that we're building in terms of sales channels that we think we're going to do very well. We wouldn't be doing this and certainly not doing it in such a public fashion if we didn't expect to be successful. I just want to, preface everything that's, there is absolute risk here with this transaction. Somebody could knock off what we're doing tomorrow and then we've got more competitors, right? So, there's just a lot of different things. I know, the product will be phenomenal. I'm very confident it'll be, well received in the market. And I know we'll work our tails off to make it the business itself successful.
Well, we appreciate your time and we appreciate your responsiveness, and we look forward to. We'll see how this goes down the road. we hope that we're talking to you more down the road in the future.
Yep.
And again, we really thank you for spending the time with us, and
My
for all
pleasure.
the people out there who are watching. We appreciate it, and thanks, and have a great day.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.